Hi, everybody, and welcome back to video number 2 in Chapter 17. And here we're taking a look at the plant-wide and departmental overhead rate methods and looking at their strengths and weaknesses. Both can use readily available information like direct labor or machine hours. They're easy to implement and they comply with GAAP and can be used for external reporting. The weaknesses, however, are that overhead cost is often too complex to be explained by factors such as direct labor hours or machine hours, commonly called volume measures. Okay. Now, the plant-wide overhead rate, this one, the overhead costs can change with the allocation base. All the products use overhead in the same proportions. The departmental overhead rate method, different products are similar in volume, complexity, and batch size. Departmental overhead costs are proportional to departmental allocation base. Okay. Those are the assumptions of the plant-wide and departmental overhead rate methods. So let's take a look at a more sophisticated way of allocating overhead costs using activity-based costing. So here, activity-based costing, ABC, focuses on 3 steps. Number 1, it identifies activities and assigns costs to activity cost pools. Number 2, we compute an overhead activity rate for each activity cost pool. And number 3, we assign overhead costs to cost objects products, just like we've been doing. So these are the cost flows under the activity-based costing system. So here's our overhead costs, and we break it down into these activities. Here's production, setup, design, factory services. Those are our activities. And then we compute an activity rate. Production makes sense that we would cost that per direct labor hour. Setups, we're going to compute the cost of a setup and allocate the number of setups based on that cost per setup. And designs, same kind of thing. We have a cost per design change, and depending on how many design changes there are, we allocate the cost based on that. And for factory services, such as our custodians and things like that, we allocate that based on the number of square feet in the plant. So as you can see from these many arrows here, we're going to allocate each one of these activities to the products based on those activity rates. Okay. Everybody see that? We'll move on. Let's take a look at how we would do that. Again, our total overhead is 4.8 million, but we divide it into our production budgeted cost, our setup budgeted cost, design budgeted cost, and factory services budgeted costs. And we know from the prior slide that we had 100,000 budgeted labor hours, but we've also added 200 setups for the number of setups, and the number of design changes, there's only 10, and the square footage here of 20,000 square feet in the plant to allocate the factory services. So let's see how that comes together. Here, we've identified the individual activities and grouped them into cost pools. Then our activity cost pool is a group of costs related to the same activity. Then our activity cost driver is a factor that causes cost of activities to go up or down. Okay, let's take a look at that. So in our second step here, applying the activity-based costing, we're going to compute the overhead activity rate for each activity. And we do that by computing an activity rate for each cost pool. And then we have an activity rate that based on budgeted activity and budgeted activity usage. So you'll remember, here's our standard model, and we have the same direct labor hours that we had in the prior slides. But here's our setups. The standard model doesn't need as many startups as the custom model, for a total of 200 setups. Design changes, we don't have any for the standard model, but the custom model, we do need to make some design changes. As the name implies, they're custom. Here. So we have 12,000 square feet that are used for the standard model, but only 8,000 square feet for the custom model. Total of 20,000 square feet. So now be sure when you're allocating or computing these activity rates that you use the totals here. All right, and here are those totals here. So we take the budgeted cost, divide it by the budgeted activity usage, and that gives us an activity rate of $6 per direct labor hour, $10,000 per setup, and $120,000 per change, and $50 per square foot. Okay. So now we're going to allocate that overhead cost to the objects in our step 3 here. And we do that by multiplying the product's actual activity usage by the budgeted activity rate to get the overhead cost allocated to each activity. So here is our standard go-kart. Here is our activities here, production, setup, design, and factory services, and our usage, and our activity rate, and the allocated cost. And we do the same thing for the custom go-kart. Again, we're using the total budgeted cost divided by the budgeted activity here, 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 and here. And we multiply that through to get allocated cost here. Now you'll notice that the $1,450,000 and the $3,350,000 totals are $4,800,000. That didn't change, just the way we've allocated it. Now we're going to divide these numbers by the total units produced. We had 5,000 standard go-karts here, and we had 1,000 custom go-karts here. So in doing this, we have a much more accurate sense as to the overhead cost per unit. All right, I think you see that. And now, if I compare that, I should say, if I put that together with the direct materials and direct labor for both of these products, that hasn't changed, but the overhead per unit has. So my product cost is $1,040 for the standard go-kart but it's gone up considerably here for the custom go-kart. Okay, so let's look at that arithmetic in a little more depth again. Here we have the production, the setup, the design, and the factory services. Those are budgeted costs. And here are our budgeted production, setup, design, and factory services. And we divide that through to get our rate per direct labor hour, our cost per setup, our cost per design change, and our $50 per square foot cost for factory services. Okay, so these allocated costs are quite different than what we calculated with the single predetermined overhead rate or even the departmental overhead rates. So now, if we compare these overhead costs, here, number one, overhead costs allocated to custom models is much higher under ABC because custom models use more activities that drive the overhead costs. Number two, ABC emphasizes activities and their costs and better reflects how overhead cost is used. And number three, the plant-wide and departmental methods do not capture products' different use of activities and can distort the overhead cost allocations. And finally, number four, low volume complex products are normally undercosted and high volume simpler products are overcosted using the plant-wide and departmental methods, often called volume measurements, using direct labor hours and machine hours. So if I look at this comparison here, the overhead cost per go-kart for the standard cost under the plant-wide method was $720, but it went down to $690 using the departmental rate method, and using activity-based costing, it goes down considerably more per unit. Whereas the custom go-kart was $1,200 using the plant-wide rate method, and using the departmental rate method, it jumped up a little to $1,350. But under activity-based costing, it jumped way up to $3,350. I think you can see number four is a very conceptual issue I want you to be sure you get your hands around, and that is that low volume, complex products, in this case, the custom go-kart, are undercosted, and high volume, simpler products, like the standard go-kart in this example, are overcosted using plant-wide and departmental methods. Okay. Now, comparing these methods for business decisions. Number one, the product cost is lower for the standard go-kart versus custom. Two, the cost difference is the largest using ABC. And number three, more accurate overhead allocation leads to better product pricing and product mix decisions. We'll come back to this slide when we return in our video number 3. Until that time, bye for now.